Mr. President, your country just celebrated 22 years of independence. You're one of the youngest nations in the world. What can other countries learn from you in their struggle for self-determination?
Well, I don't know whether anyone should learn anything from us, but what I can do is to share a bit of our experience. I recall many years ago, 20 years ago, I gave a lecture at the London School of Economics. After my lecture, a young Palestinian, he was maybe 20, 21, he came to me and said, "Please explain to me. Timor-Leste is so small. We are big. Palestinians were millions. It's already 60 years we don't achieve independence. And Timor-Leste is small, poor, already independent. Can you explain?" And I told him, I said, "Listen, I don't like to lecture anyone. Each country, each people with our respective histories, experiences, emotions, motivations, and we may react differently as well. However, I told him throughout our struggle, we never succumb to hatred towards Indonesia, Indonesians as a people, hatred towards Indonesia as Muslims, because the majority Indonesia Muslim. And we never miss an opportunity, a window of opportunity that open. We try to seize it, walk in.
200,000 East Timorese died under the occupation. You yourself lost siblings. When we look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and clearly there are historical differences, but isn't there a time when you would say it's just too difficult to forget?
No, actually, I have to say, all the years I was abroad, particularly lobbying at the United Nations, in Washington, I got to know the US Congress like my own kitchen. And yet it was very frustrating because in the beginning no one knew much about Timor-Leste. United States administration, successive administration, bet on supporting Indonesia, totally hostile to Timor-Leste. The US provided most of the weapons, 90% of the weapons to Indonesia. Similar to what they are doing with Israel and Gaza. But still, I just continue lobbying patiently in US Congress, not getting angry, of course, angry inside, but keep building bridges, winning friends, and then we end up with many friends in the US Congress.
So your council would be making more concessions?
Well, in a sense, what won for us a lot of respect is that we never engage in violence against Indonesian civilians, never. In the 24 years of Indonesia's presence in Timor-Leste, there were tens of thousands of Indonesian civilians, school teachers, farmers, civil servants, families of the military who were here. Not a single one was ever killed, kidnapped by us. In the course of the struggle, we had our own military force. Very small, but Timorese are great fighters. Mounting people a bit like the Palestinians, or a bit like the Kurdish, or very tough fighters. And going back to World War II, when the Japanese invaded, occupied Timor-Leste, our people fought back. But when the Indonesian military were captured in an ambush, not a single one was killed. Taken to our base, after a few weeks, few months, they were dropped on the road and tell them, go back to your barracks. And because we never demonized Indonesians as a religion, as a people, was easy. much easier to persuade friends in US, in Europe, around the world to sympathize with us. Had we engaged in killing innocent people, kidnapping, blowing up schools, burning clinics, we would not be free today. Our only strength was our ethics, our morality.
Your neighboring country, Indonesia, just recently voted Prabowo Subianto as president. Now, he was a commander of special forces under the time of the occupation in the 80s and 90s here in your country. What were your feelings when Indonesians voted for him?
Well, I was the first president to call and congratulate President-elect Prabowo for his election. He's a highly educated individual. He speaks flawless English. He knows the world.
And speaks German too.
Yes, he's. For us, past is past. Indonesia has been a true friend of Timor-Leste. Because let me say one thing that people don't understand. Indonesia is democratic today. Timor-Leste is free today. It thanks a lot to the Indonesian army, to the TNI. Because the TNI in '98 could have said, no reformasi, no transition to democracy. They would take over and rule the country like Tatmadaw, the military in Myanmar, or like other dictatorships in the world. No, they agree that Suharto must step down. They did enforce upon the country a military regime, and they agree on the referendum for self-determination in Timor-Leste. And when the result came against continue with Indonesia, they accepted and they left. They could have said, we reject the result of the referendum. It was fake, it was false, or whatever. So thanks a lot to the Indonesian army, to TNI, that today Indonesia is democracy and Timor-Leste is free.
But how important would you say is accountability, or this idea that potential war criminals need to be investigated, or at least that one looks into the affair, is there something to it or not?
For us, the greatest act of justice for the people of Timor-Leste is that finally, after 24 years of injustice, Timor-Leste is free. It's free not only because of our own fighting, no, but because of Indonesia changed, agreed to it, United States changed, President Bill Clinton played a very important role. So for us, a grave injustice was addressed, was resolved. For us, that is most important.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned the Israeli-Palestinian case. The International Criminal Court is now investigating the Israeli head of government. What do you make of that idea?
Entirely justified. Look at what Israel has done in Gaza. Killing of tens of thousands of people and wounded. Total destruction of the country, denial of humanitarian access, destruction of hospitals, snipe killing of aid workers, of doctors, intellectuals. These are crimes against humanity. These are war crimes. However, if a new Israeli leadership emerge out of this chaos, decide to work fast and honestly on creating this two-state solution, implementing the two-state solution, which has been very much opposed by Netanyahu. Because remember, Netanyahu, he is the one who has been very supportive of Hamas. He tells everybody to support Hamas. He tells Qatar to support Hamas because he says anyone who disagrees with the two-state solution should support Hamas because of Hamas extremism they alienate supporters in Israel for the two-state solution. Netanyahu out with his diabolic theories, a more moderate conciliatory regime in Israel, working with the UN, the United States, on fast-track the implementation of the two-state solution. Maybe ICC case could put to rest. Because sometimes, yes, we have to ask a question. If there is progress on the two-state solution, then ICC should go slow. Because with us, what happened? It was the Indonesian military themselves who first supported the removal of Suharto, because they denied continuous support to him in 98, 99. Then they agree with the Reformasi, and they agree with the referendum in Timor-Leste. So the military in Indonesia should have more credit. And that's why today we have the best possible relationship, Timor-Leste and Indonesia, including with the military. So similar situation can occur in Gaza, West Bank, and Israel.
Let's talk a bit about foreign policy. You're a small country, but there is currently on both the Chinese side and the US side a great interest in Southeast Asia, and you're at a strategic point. How do you place your country in this US-China rivalry?
We have an exceptionally good relation with the United States. President Biden is one of the best presidents in many years in the United States, and he has done tremendous for the U.S. economy, far more than this warmonger, unpredictable Donald Trump, who is a real estate broker.
And who's running again for president?
Who's running again. Well, look at the U.S. democracy. When you have someone in Europe, whom I know well, someone like Donald Trump would never be elected president of the United States. But it shows also the fragility, the precarious situation of politics in the U.S., of its judicial system, of its institutions, that someone like Donald Trump can mislead millions of people into voting for him. He's the biggest fraud in the U.S. history.
But how do you place your country in that rivalry? You've mentioned a few times that you try to be neutral. Is that possible?
Well, I wouldn't say try to be neutral, in the sense we have a great relationship with the United States, but we don't see China with the same lenses as the United States. China is not a threat to anyone. China is primarily focused on peace, stability in the Asia region, because China knows it is in a very fragile regional environment. Any false move using force to settle disputes in the region, whether Taiwan, South China Sea, or China-India territorial dispute, would set in motion chain of events that would not be possible to stop, and they would drag down China for a long, long time, and the whole world. So one virtue of the Chinese is current Chinese leadership, since the Cultural Revolution, they are very prudent, very pragmatic.
And is that why you have reached out for a strategic partnership? I mean, you have a big oil field that you are trying to explore with Australia, but it hasn't worked for 2 decades, and now you have reached out to China. So aren't you tying yourself already a bit there?
No, the Chinese are very interested in developing our gas fields called Greater Sunrise and others. But not only oil and gas, they're very interested in investing here. We are interested in them coming to invest. But we don't have a single cent of loan from China. Our debt, which is only 13% of our GDP, so one of the lowest in the world, as percentage of GDP has been mostly with ADB, Asian Development Bank, World Bank, and IFC. So we have a great relationship with the United States, and we have a great relationship with China. We will continue that. We disagree with the United States, the way they perceive China as a threat to the United States, as a threat to the world. I'm not convinced. I know China well. I know the United States well. I know Europe inside out. And I don't see how one can say China is a threat to the world. Even from the point of view, militarily speaking, China is no match for the United States. The United States has many more allies in the region than China. South Korea, Japan, Philippines, Singapore, and we have zero interest, zero need in having on our soil military presence. We do have 30 or 40 Australian military advisors, 30 maybe Portuguese military police advisors. That's about it. We don't have any other nationality.
Finally, let's take a look at your country. Unfortunately, one of the poorest in the world. There are problems with corruption. There are problems with diversifying the economy. Would you say 22 years after independence, it has been worth it? Where do you see the course of your country?
Well, let me tell you, in 2002, we had 20 medical doctors. Today we have 1,200 medical doctors. In 2002, we had 1 PhD. Now we have almost 100 PhDs, not only in social science, humanities, but in sciences, in economics, in agriculture, technology, and so on. So I'm not the Prime Minister, but if I were, I would advocate that Timor-Leste becomes 100% tax-free country, 100% free trade area. No restrictions of any sort, because I believe that free trade, zero tax would accelerate Timor-Leste development and modernization. Because we do have some revenues for the next 30, 40 years from oil and gas, although we are also working on transitioning to renewable. But until that happens, we will benefit from oil and gas revenues. So why do we need to tax people? Particularly, we should not tax any Timorese company, any Timorese business that create jobs in the country.
You have been foreign minister, you have been prime minister, and you have been president several times. Do you have the personnel in the country, do you feel, that's growing to bring the country into the brighter future?
Yes, of course, because running the country is not only me and Mr. Shanana. There are many young people working in the government as ministers. In the parliament, they are all young people, not one belonging to this 75 generation, our generation, in the parliament, all of them. 30+% are women. We have more people now, many more, working throughout and in the private sector as engineers, architects. So the problem is obviously self-confidence and sophistication in international affairs, but they will learn. They've been learning. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.